So today I'm telling you about my experience as an expert patient. What I'm going to tell you is going to be complementary to what Micheline Clodon said. You'll see how much complementary we are. I'm a former addict. I'm a former alcoholic person. It's a language, it's a word that is poetically not very politically correct within the care teams of the Bichat hospitals because it bears so much stigmata and very heavy with mental constructions. But anyway, I'm a former alcoholic. And when I was worried. My consumption was daily. I was drinking at night. And because I'm a woman, quite often I was drinking alone, quantities which increased. There was a loss of control. A lot of time spent drinking and recovering from drinking effects. So I was really in the addiction process. And I was followed by a psychiatrist, not for alcohol, but for something else. And he advised me to go and talk to Professor Le Joyeux in the Bichat Hospital. That's how I came to see him, 7 years ago, roughly. In my state of mind, it was a little bit special when I came to see him. I thought, no, I'm not an alcoholic, not me. Okay, I have a little problem, maybe a big problem, but I'm not. I mean, he's not going to tell me to quit drinking because I can't stop anyway. So he's going to tell me that I'm okay. I just have to be a little bit careful, but I'm okay. And in that state of mind, I came to see him, and after 10 minutes, Professor Le Joyeux told me, well, you are followed by my friend, Dr. X. Well, I'm hospitalizing you. Well, yeah, come, I'll show you the service. And that was very violent. That was not what I hoped to hear. But I think, yeah, in the end, that's probably what I came to get. But at the time, I was shocked a little bit, you know. And then I came and got hospitalized. When I got to the hospital, I signed that contract, which Madame Clodon talked about before. I'm a lawyer by training and by trade. I'm working part-time, and as a lawyer, I knew what a contract was. I knew the obligations, the duties, and reciprocity duties the hospital committed to, dispense care, and I saw what I had to commit to do. And the first thing that seemed absolutely impossible was to not drink. I signed thinking, oh, I'm going to breach it, but I signed. And there's two items really shocked me, and they were in bold characters in the slide, in underlined. It was to receive the visits of expert patients into my room, and the second thing was to go and attend speech therapy group. I didn't know if it had anything to do with, alcohol, quitting, and so on. So anyway, I signed. I wanted to get away from that, from drinking. So, and then indeed, expert patient visit was validated by the team, and it was presented like a care, just like a medication, or it was a full-on, care, and they all, nurses, physicians, all talked about how good it would be for me to have those expert patients in my journey. And then I started to think, maybe besides the usual knowledge, maybe experience could be knowledge. I was in the midst of alcohol, at that time, still in that. But I sort of understood that idea of knowledge by experience, or experience as a knowledge. And the visit of expert patient was a transmission of life, of story. And I was in that problem. How am I going to live without alcohol when they came? And I knew I had to quit. But at the same time, I couldn't see how I could spend my days without drinking because my life would be meaningless. And they came here. And I could testify with them, and it was one of the first times I could speak about alcohol in my life. And they understood what I told them. They might not understood intellectually like the carers, but they understood physically. I can't explain how. They had a physical understanding. I felt it was experience. And themselves, they talked about their own life and journeys, and that is how they must have stayed an hour in my room because they testified, they shared a possible life after alcohol, and a happy life too. It was a man and a woman, and they looked like they were having fun. And I thought they must have taken something else, another product or something, And that's how I mean, I came to the second obligation that was speech therapy group. No choice. I didn't want to go at all. For another reason is that I'm talking like that, I was terribly ashamed. I mean, of alcohol. There was no way I could speak about myself and alcohol and my shame. And in my construction, in my representation, I didn't want to be with alcoholic people. It was impossible. I mean, they were really people. I saw them in. I mean, we all have an image of an alcoholic person, and as long as we are, we are not like them, we think. Of course, it's a lack of knowledge about the disease. Anyway, I got to the speech group, and they were people like everyone else, like the men and women, young and older people from all type of social and professional environments, from backgrounds, very different. And I listened to them. I had no choice. I was there. And so I didn't want to get bored. So I listened to them, and I heard in their testimonials something that looked like my life. Of course, no perfect identification, but some experience and some commonalities in their lives. And I thought it was very strong, and that's how, when I walked out of the hospital, in the hospital, you understand it's an obligation. The Bichat Hospital, it's an obligation to go to the support groups, right? And in the follow-up, of course, it's when you are leaving the hospital, that's when things get, set up. You have a stronger recommendation from the caregivers to come back to the support group. And then patients themselves invite you to come back as well. And that is how I came back again and again. And I found my place there. I found I belonged there. And I went regularly. I took this support group like a full care intervention, right? And I went from alcohol-free period, and then I moved on to a period of life outside of alcohol. That is, it's no more my concern, alcohol. And I felt unexpected consequences. I felt better and better. And in the support group, I felt I had my own belonging. I came from myself, and then I realized that little by little, I got off the center on myself, but I came to help others more than help myself. Of course I helped myself, but there was I was centering away from my own, as I said, ego. And then patients asked me questions, and the carers themselves talked to me and asked me questions. And it came gradually, but I felt I had a place there. I belonged, and I felt I was recognized, and people actually turned to me, and they listened to my words. And so I thought maybe I could be a carer as well in that hospital, Bichat Hospital. And so to do this, I was strongly advised to go and go to have an alcohology university degree. So I went to university, and that uni degree that I got, in this year at the university, I discovered a lot of things. I understood it was a condition that was it was a condition that is necessary, and it's a prerequisite, if you like. It was necessary to take that degree for me, very useful, because scientifically I could discover what my disease was. Because I could myself look at, be distant and look at what happens. I understood the physiological and physical and chemical mechanism of the disease, of alcohol, how it's not good for health, and how. Very interesting. And the second learning that I took home was, in this university degree, among the students there were physicians, and there were a couple of psychiatrists and a couple of occupational doctors. And those people turned to me again, and they asked me questions about my experience, and those questions was not just for the pure, form. They were interested in hearing my answers, and that's when I realized that my story, my experience, because I could formulate it into words, because I took, because I could be distant from that. My experience became a true experience. I could testify, and it became experiential, or a knowledge of experience, or experience as a knowledge. I had the experience of the disease. I could talk about what dependence was, and I had my experience as a patient I went through the care in the hospital, relationships with the patients when I was hospitalized, and also experience when I got away from the disease, after the disease, after alcohol. So there was a whole lot of items, and those made up my experience, my experiential knowledge. Of course, they were strongly linked with my emotions and the subjective myself. And I discovered people could learn something from that, and it was a very strong discovery. And so with this diploma, I came back to the hospital. I went on, going to the hospital as an expert patient. But it would not have been enough for me to be satisfied with that diploma, that university diploma only. It was not enough. Because if I did that, I would not have been able to confront, to sometimes be challenged by some, in practice, walk in a room and have an exchange with a patient can be a lot of emotional turmoil and offsets, for you. I needed to go further, and I need to exchange with other expert patients and with the care teams. I'm saying other expert patients because I'm not the only one. I'm saying but there's several of us. And we thought from that experience we were having, it's very empirical, what we lived. And we thought it would be possible to bridge this to theories. And so we shared different literatures that we read, and that's how we connected our activity. We hooked it on peer health mediators, which Madame Clodon told you about. This was an experiment with the WHO, CC, and this was about mental health, and it was about creating a new type of job that was health intermediaries, health mediators. And also we looked at the Montreal experiment. And so very theoretically we saw we could actually, link ourselves up to these two models, these two experiments. And so there were those three items. One item was distance, bilingualism, and mutual identification, reciprocal identification. And so these theories, we knew that we had to adapt them, because in a room, in a patient's hospital room, it's not happening like on the paper, and so we adapted to each other. And we could do this because there was supervision. And this, I think, is the essential core of, we could not do this job if there was no supervision. We need to exchange about some trauma maybe sometimes we may have, and some positions that we have to adopt, or maybe how to reestablish distance when patients become too close, things like that. And that's how, that supervision helps. I'm a lawyer, but once a week I'm going to the hospital, into the patient's hospital rooms, and before to do this, I'm actually received by the team, and it's very important. We have an exchange time with the care team, and there's the rule of shared secrecy, medical secrecy. We are telling, of course, they are telling us who is there, who we're going to visit. Some of them, unfortunately, we know them because it's not their first time in the cure. But we have newcomers, and depending on affinities and experiences and jobs, we sort of share, who we are going to talk to, and we share the patients with us. And so we talk to them, then there's a follow-up protocol. So you see, the first part of my activity is with the patients, and the second one is as a trainer, and that's how we can claim the Montreal model as something that we used as a model. And I have to go, that's why we have to go now. I think time is a bit short and I spoke maybe too much, so but thank you very much.